And that resilient musical introduction is our way of saying good morning and welcome to a special Sunday. Happens to be the centennial of the end of World War I, and it's also Armistice and Veterans Day. Welcome to another Sunday here at First Unitarian Society, where independent thinkers can gather in a safe, nurturing environment to explore issues of social, spiritual, and ethical significance as we try to make a difference in this world. And speaking of things that are different in this world, I'm Steve Goldberg, a proud, extraordinarily adorable member of this congregation, and resilient doesn't begin to describe me. And I would like to, so endeth the service. But I'd like to extend a special welcome to any guests, visitors, or newcomers. If this is your first time at First Unitarian Society, I think you'll find it's a special place. And we welcome you to our fellowship hour right after the service. And speaking of the service, as you know, this is a perfect time to silence those pesky electronic devices that you just will not need for the next hour, because instead you'll be enjoying the service, which I know will touch your heart, stir your spirit, and trigger one or two new thoughts. We're really glad that you're here. In a minute or two, we'll rise for our ingathering hymn, but before we do that, I invite you to join in a moment of centering silence so we can be fully present with each other this morning.
Good morning. In a moment, we'll stand and sing out of the Teal hymnal number 1024, When the Spirit Says Do. We'll sing it 4 times with these words. You got to do when the Spirit says do, and then the second time, sing when the Spirit says sing, dance when the Spirit says dance, and finally, shout when the Spirit says shout. And at the end, to finish up, the very last time, we'll sing those same 4 words together. Look up, and I'll show you when. Do, sing, dance, shout. If you sing the wrong word, sing it with gusto. Up we go. Do when the Spirit says do. You gotta do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to do, oh Lord. You got to do when the Spirit says do. 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 Spirit says. You gotta sing. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. You got to sing, sing. You got to sing, oh Lord. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. 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 Spirit says. You gotta dance. You got to dance when the Spirit says dance. You got to dance when the Spirit says dance. When the Spirit says dance, you got to dance, oh Lord. You got to dance when the Spirit says dance. 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 Spirit says. One more time, you gotta shout. gotta shout when the Spirit says shout. You gotta shout when the Spirit says shout. You got, Spirit says shout, you got to shout, oh Lord. You got to shout when the Spirit says shout. 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 You got to do, sing, dance, shout.
And remaining standing for our opening words. We pause this morning from the chaos of the world to reclaim the beauty within these walls that carry us through our week. Will you join your voice with mine as we spark our chalice with the words printed in your order of service, as together we say, as we kindle this flame, may it spark in each of us connection and commitment to this living tradition and to each other. I invite us to turn towards each other and offer a warm greeting.
Okay, can we have the kids come forward for our story today? Come on forward. Good morning. Good morning. Hi. Hi everyone, how you doing today? Good? Good. Good. Okay, well, I'm glad that you're here because we are going to continue our story about the adventures of Pinky. A couple weeks ago, my friend Karen and I introduced you to our friend Pinky. Do you remember Pinky? Yeah? What kind of animal is Pinky? An elephant. That's right, an elephant. And you may recall that Pinky's kind of shy. And you guys were so warm and welcoming to Pinky that Pinky actually came out of the fort to say hello to you, which was so nice. And Pinky, that makes Pinky want to come again, so that's really wonderful. We also talked about some of the adventures that Pinky likes to do. So you may remember that Pinky likes to have adventures in the kitchen, cooking lots of really yummy things. Yeah, there's Pinky. And Pinky likes adventures in the garden, growing lots of wonderful things. And Pinky likes to climb trees. Well, today I'm going to tell you about a sad thing that happened to Pinky. Pinky was out playing with friends and was climbing a tree and stepped on a branch, and the branch broke, and Pinky fell to the ground. Ouch. That really hurt Pinky, and Pinky was scared, and Pinky's friends were scared. But Zebra had a really good idea. Zebra thought, let's run and get the first aid kit, and we'll help Pinky. And they wrapped bandages around Pinky in all the places that Pinky got hurt. Lots of bandages, right? And then they took Pinky to the veterinarian, Dr. Muffin. And Dr. Muffin gave Pinky a good look over and said, you know, you're hurt in a lot of places, but the good news is that you only have a broken leg, and you don't have to wear all those bandages. So Dr. Muffin took off a bunch of the bandages and then said, but you know, the bad news is that you do have a broken leg, and that's not much fun. That means you got to stay off your leg for a while. So Pinky thought, well, what am I going to do? How am I going to do all the things that I like to do if I can't walk on my leg? And Pinky's friend said, don't worry, we'll help you. They came to the rescue. Pooch said, why don't we start by taking you to the grocery store? And so Zebra and Pooch and Monkey took Pinky to the co-op to load up on some groceries for the week. Then they went home, and Fox and Clifford made Pinky a big pot of vegetable soup. That's one of Pinky's favorites. Yeah. And Fox said, this is good for you because the vegetables are really going to help you get healthy, Pinky. And, Pinky spent a couple weeks getting better, healing a little bit. They were able to go out to the playground after a couple weeks and gently play outside. And then after a couple weeks more, Pinky said, I really miss being at church with you all. Maybe we could all go back to church so that we could be at worship together and go to our religious education classes together, because I miss all my people there. But I can't do it alone. I'm going to need your help, he said to his friends. And so they said, don't worry, Pinky. We got you. We'll help you. And now, Pinky is with us today. Isn't that great? Do you guys want to say hello to Pinky? Hi, Pinky. You have a fox like that at home? That's awesome. Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much for listening to Pinky's advent. Oh, hold on, I think Pinky wants to tell me something. Okay. Pinky says that Pinky really hopes that you are as good of a friend to your friends as Pinky's friends have been to Pinky, helping Pinky through this difficult time. And Pinky is wondering, what do you do to help your friends when they're having a hard time? What kinds of things do you do? Yeah. Give them a hug. That's so nice. I'm going to try that with Pinky. What do you do? Oh, that's very nice. You help them back up and get some adult to help. That's good. Any other ideas about what you do to help your friends? Yeah? High fives. All right. That's great. We all feel a little happier when we get a high five, don't we? It sounds like you all are as good of friends to your friends as Pinky's friends have been to Pinky, which is great. That makes me really happy to hear that. Oh, hold on. Pinky is telling me something else. Oh, Pinky thinks that it would be really wonderful to hear some beautiful music right now. Do you want to hear some beautiful music? Yeah, let's listen.
And the ocean cries.
so beautiful, wasn't it? All right, well, Pinky thinks it's time for us to head out to classes now. So why don't we head on out and we'll let the adults continue singing.
We're going to sing the children out with hymn number 346 in our gray hymnal. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know you're mine. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me, that I might know you're mine. And I bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. I hope you get the opportunity to hear the congregation singing from up here. I have the best seat in the house. Great job. The first reading is from Lao Tzu, from the Tao Te Ching. The ancient masters did not try to educate the people, but kindly taught them to not know. When they think that they know the answers, people are difficult to guide. Is that why you chose me for this reading? That's probably a good idea. When they know that they don't know, people can find their own way. If you want to learn how to govern, avoid being clever or rich. The simplest pattern is the clearest. Content with an ordinary life, you can show all people the way back to their own true nature.
Thank you, Drew. The second reading is taken from the words of Annie Dillard, who is almost always evocative, but sometimes actually provocative, and from her writing, Teaching a Stone to Talk. Why do people in church seem like cheerful, brainless tourists on a package tour of the absolute? Does anyone have the foggiest idea what sort of power we so blithely invoke? Or, as I suspect, does no one believe a word of it? The churches are children playing on the floor with their chemistry sets, mixing up a batch of TNT to kill a Sunday morning. It's madness to wear women's lady straw hats and velvet hats to church. We should all be wearing crash helmets. Ushers should issue life preservers and signal flares. They should lash us to our pews. For the sleeping God may wake someday and take offense, or the waking God may draw us out where we can never return. Here ends the reading. One Sunday, even though I was not in the pulpit, I attended the service anyway, which I don't recommend. By the way, if you're a minister, it's like a busman's holiday, without a doubt. But I wanted to be there in particular because we had a guest preacher. And I knew that the process to select this preacher, primarily heralded by the Social Justice Committee, had been, shall we say, a spectacular process. And I hoped that my presence would be reassuring to everyone that this was indeed a good and important Sunday for us all. But just as the sermon began, I felt a hand on my shoulder, and I turned to see a young man in the congregation who I knew was having a rough time in the last weeks. He had recently learned that his marriage was coming to an end, and his own life and the life of his family were in upheaval. And I could tell from the look on his face that he was in a space of despair. So I followed him out of the sanctuary to a quiet corner. And there he expressed that in a time when he felt like he was drowning, that this service was just not cutting it for him. His life was coming apart at the seams, and he wanted this sermon to mend it. Now, just for a moment, I was tempted from a place of defensiveness to make certain he knew just how much planning and rigmarole had gone into this service in the first place. But greater wisdom prevailed. I took a deep breath. I asked him to tell me about his life and what was on his heart right now. And I listened. But as I returned to the service, I was reminded what I already knew, that week after week, at every service, most preachers know that even if there are only a handful of people in the congregation, that there is seated in that space someone who is struggling with feeling like their world was collapsing, like that young man. And at the same time, someone is experiencing a moment of such transcendent bliss that she is desperately seeking somewhere to share it before it fades from memory. Someone in the congregation is terminally bored. Someone has just fallen in love. Someone is a mere shadow of their usual self because they are waiting anxiously for a medical test result. Someone, inevitably, has been up for the third night in a row all night in deep angst. And the preacher stands before them all, gathering the words that he hopes or she hopes to offer some sort of saving grace, even if they don't believe in the words saving grace. And if one were to accept that mission, then one might pull the covers over one's head before each and every sermon and not get out of bed in the first place. However, fear not, we Unitarian Universalists have done this for a few hundred years, and we have benefited from the wisdom and, yes, thank goodness, the folly of our forebears. And we who lead worship have a few guiding lights that help us help you through the fog. For one thing, we have a cloud of witnesses who have done thoughtful work. People like V. Ogden Vogt, who served the congregation in First Congregation in Chicago. and many others who had a great passion for understanding and deepening what we do as religious liberals when we come together in this time. And whether we specifically invoke that work or not, I would guess that about 90% of Unitarian Universalist clergy begin their work with the understanding of the word worship itself, being the cornerstone of what we are trying to do when we come together in times like these. But the thing is, they understand that word by its original etymology from the Old English, which is way worshipy, which is pronounced nothing like it is spelled, as all Old English words are. But what it means is to shape worth and to honor the meaning of life. So when we gather here week after week, I can't speak for every colleague, but I know that I return to that word every week as my touchstone. The word worship itself reminds me that my job here is to craft experiences to the best of my ability to help you shape, discover, recover what is worthwhile in your life. What it is that is a source of deep meaning that is probably already present within you and to which you may turn and return again and again. And when faced with desperation like that young man, longing for something to anchor our lives again, the word worship as no other reminds me that I am called to an ancient craft to carefully engage you all in a loving, compassionate conversation to find yourselves again, week after week. Well aware that sources like the American Heritage Dictionary define worship as the reverent love and devotion accorded a deity or an idol or a sacred object. The thing is that as religious liberals, we know how to do the translation of that. That deity, God, sacred, all of those things talk about ideas that are so complicated that if every time we listed all that might mean, we would be here for the entire week just in worship. But it reminds us when we use those words of mystery and love, of transcendent powers in our lives that are not easily described. It invites us to a spirit of poetry. It invites us to move into a liminal space together and to use our imaginations rather than check them at the door. And so the work that we do here pulls on so much of who we are and asks so much in what we are trying to foster together here. And there is more to what makes this time powerful. We wranglers of worship experience that complicated craft as a pathway to resilience for so many reasons. But first and foremost, we begin with the meaning of the word worship. By coming here week after week and doing our best to help you find for yourself what is the few worthy things that you can dedicate and offer your life to return to that touchstone in and of itself can help you find your way when you feel lost, when you feel overwhelmed, when you have temporarily lost grasp of hope in your life. What we're trying to do here as best we can is to let you find it in this space. And so what we do here is essential and important, but it calls us even further than what happens here. Martin Luther King Jr. said that worship at its best is a social experience with the people of all levels of life coming together to realize their oneness and unity under God. And as I've just said, that the idea is that if God is a word that we use for that which is of ultimate worth in the world, Each person, when they come into their house of worship, is unified in the sense of finding meaning in their lives. And how powerful is that to know that week after week throughout the world, people gather and they do that hard work just like we do, using different words, probably coming to some different conclusions, but each in their own way doing the same essential life work. And the power that comes out of that corporate energy throughout the world and what it does century after century, even in the midst of the divisions that have happened around religion. Great power happens in what we try to craft here. And Unitarian Universalist clergy understand the power described by King and its practice week after week, and how by our presence here together, we shape and live deeper resilience. Worship is resiliency itself because whenever we craft or skill or shape an experience together, it is actually pretty consistent with Annie Dillard's imaginatively described words. Yes, because of the wildness of the world that we live in now, but that our forebears lived in such a wild world of its own kind as well. Because of the power of what we are trying to do here and the truths that we are attempting to grapple with. And especially because we are trying to remind each and every one of you to return to what matters most to you and live from that place, especially when the threads of your life seem to have come apart. Because of that, yes, it probably would be best for us to give you a crash helmet or a life preserver when you come in here, but that probably would just make everything worse. No single service will always do that task. Sometimes when you come into this place, it will not speak to you, but that's okay. You are doing the work anyway. And the cumulative power of gathering here week after week into years asks us steadily to transform ourselves and urges us to do life-saving, truth-recovering work. Each of us, week after week into the cycle of years, in the midst of our despair, at the height of our exhaustion, when we feel most wounded, in all of those spaces, we do that work together. The creators of worship know that they cannot give you the answers. As the Tao Te Ching reading reminds us, it is in a place of great not knowing, when you come with an open mind and heart of question, that you really begin to find your way. And finding our way together into truths that are not overly complicated and ornate, often actually disarmingly, horrifyingly simple, will again and again most powerfully remind us what we are to do. Resilience and worship are fostered by a deeper sense of connection. Resilience is deepened by participating within and amongst community. Resilience is fostered when you show up and you bring your real self into this space. Resiliency is encouraged when you participate in elements and styles of worship that are so not your personal favorite. One, because even if it's not your thing, inevitably there's someone else in this room that is having their life changed in that moment. And what a gift to be in a space where that is happening, even if it's not happening for you in that moment. Give it another week and see what happens. But almost always, if you can find a place to just breathe deeply and let yourself engage even those styles that are so uncomfortable for you, there is inevitably something in it that may be speaking to you. And that, too, is a life-changing blessing. Resilience is strengthened when you encounter ideas, words, life experiences that push your tender edges. And in those instances, aided by the grace of the growing trust of coming into this community week after week, the healing power of truth, and the personal growth that you are doing, whether you know it or not, all of those come together and conspire that to bring you into a place of change. Not in spite of that tenderness, but because of the power of that vulnerability. What we do here is so important. And so often we sort of gloss over the power of what we're trying to do and how tender and fragile and resilient all at the same time it is. Resilience is demonstrated when such practices week after week encourage each and every one of us to act from places of shared strength. And in ways that we never imagined, we discover the ability to love, to do justice, to shape community, to make the world even more alive. It was the time of the closing hymn, and the minister stood up and said before the closing hymn, as is our practice in this congregation, today we will bid farewell to one of our members who has been a part of our congregation for 40 years. And he acknowledged that a man sitting about 3 rows from the front in a wheelchair, Frank, was leaving that day to move to another state. And even though Frank had never held a position of power in the congregation, almost everyone in that large congregation knew him at least by sight. For one thing, he was the only person in a congregation where most of them showed up in jeans or shorts or even sweatpants that would always wear a suit and tie to the service. Just saying, it's my only chance to dress up every week. I want to do it right. But more powerfully for many people in the congregation, he was a quiet soul that was always available to people when they were in a place of struggle. And every year he offered, as part of the service auction, a time to work on poetry in a small class. And people would fight for a position in that class because they wanted to spend time with a person that had let life and all of its wonder and difficulty shape him into a very lovely being. And so, as they stood, the minister said, in kind of an unexpected gift of this closing hymn that we didn't know when we chose it, is that it happens to be Frank's favorite hymn. And so as we sing it to you, Frank, with love and good wishes in the next chapter of your life. And as the minister said that, and as many people in the congregation who knew Frank well knew, it really wasn't Frank's deep desire to leave at all. As he had grown older, his children who lived all over the U.S. wanted him closer to at least one of them so that they could feel like they could be helpful. And so finally he had relented and had chosen to leave a town that had been his home for almost his entire adult life and people that he loved dearly. And so many people knew how hard that choice was for him. And so they stood and they began to sing the hymn that was his favorite. And as they came around the corner of the first verse and they sang together, "And I'll give you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time." As they sang that, one of the young women who had been in his last poetry class, just without even thinking about what she was doing, stepped from her pew and walked over next to Frank and knelt by him in his wheelchair and just took his hand. And another woman who was on the other side of the congregation, when she saw that happening, she just had to join in too. And so she crossed the sanctuary and just gently put her hand on his shoulder. And when that happened, the people standing around Frank began to think, well, apparently this is a ritual I don't even know about. And so they reached forward and they put their hands on his shoulder as well. And if they couldn't reach him, they placed their hands on the person in front of them. And people began to notice that the people in front of them were doing this strange thing where they were touching the people in front of them as we sang this hymn together. And finally, by the last verse of that hymn, 400 people were joined in a chain of community and love, all connecting to this man. Whether they knew him or not, whether they knew his story, they knew the power and the pain of goodbye. And they knew how important it was to know that you will be missed. And in that moment of worship, they were unified in the most impromptu and yet meaningful expression of community. And together, in love, they sent him forth with their power and their deep affection. When we worship together, it connects us. When we worship, it reminds us who we are and what in our lives is important. Worship illuminates the resilience that is found in our deepest selves, that part of us that connects human to human and fosters the only real transformative connections that we know. And from this illumination, from this connection, imperfect as it always is, we make our way. And in that journey, we shape moments of wholeness. And somehow we save ourselves, in at least in a small way, every time we save this world again and again. Blessed be the work that we do here. Blessed be your part in it. Amen. And blessed be. Each week, there are places in the service that don't always get the sort of gravitas that they really deserve. The offertory and the offering is really one of those places. Because what we're trying to do in this time is to assess in our own lives all that we have been given, the resources that we have. Think about the world as it really is and how we are each called to offer what we have in gratitude and love. As we receive this offering, may we know that we are doing that work. And may we remember that this week in particular, that part of our offering goes to benefit Veterans for Peace. You can find out more about their work in the order of service, and also there is a table out during coffee hour. May that powerful spirit of generosity be alive as we give and receive this offering. Every week, this worship service is indeed a shared ministry, and so we take a moment to offer gratitude for those that help us be together in this time. And so we are deeply grateful for the lay ministry of Judy Troya. Our greeters today were Karen Hill and Penny Morey. Our ushers were Pamela McMullen, Gail Bliss, and Douglas Hill. We are grateful for the hospitality ministry through coffee of Lois Evanson and Jean Hills. And our flowers were offered this morning by Wilson Leonhard. Our welcome table and info table has been staffed and will be staffed by Dorrit Berrigan. Thank you for your gift and the ongoing gift of how we help this time come together. I remind you of an important opportunity this week. Next weekend is our Art in the Right Place, which is a major undertaking of service, but also an incredibly fun event that brings much of the community together. And so at the end of the service, if you want to stay seated for a couple of seconds, you'll get a little taste of and hopefully some inspiration to be part of Art in the Right Place up on the screen. Every week, we join together in sharing the cares of the congregation. I invite us as we join in this time to bring a special sense of presence by allowing an awareness of our breath for a moment to bring us fully into this place. And also, as we breathe in and release that breath into the world, to know that we are taking part in the essence of life itself. And may that simple but life-giving act remind us of the ways that we are connected, of the joys and sorrows that we share, the ways that we love and are loved. This week, in particular, we remember with Leah Sinclair a sense of gratitude to everyone here who helped while her parents were gone. Our hearts are with Scott Wavera, who was admitted to a Grace hospice care this past week. We send him our strength and our love as he travels this part of his journey. We send our love and our prayers to his family as well, especially his wife Dawn, as they walk this journey with him. May they know that we surround them with a circle of love, compassion, and strength. Please send your loving thoughts to Chris Ferrier, who is home today recovering from an emergency appendectomy. For all the ways that we have joys and sorrows, both those that are shared and those deep within us, we hold space for them here. May we find ways to respond to each other, drawing from a common sense of hope, the power of love, the miracle of life that we reinvest in every time that we remember and care. For all this, we are deeply grateful and closely connected. So may it be. Will you join me rising in all the ways that we do in our closing hymn, number 318, We Would Be One.
As now we join in singing.
And now, as you go forth from this place, may you find always within yourself that place of deep resilience. And when you lose that thread, may this place help you find it again, always being called to that deeper sense of service to the world. We extinguish this light, but not the light of that wisdom, not the fire of our commitment to the things that matter, not the warmth of the community that we seek together to build. These remain in your lives until you gather in this place again. For a moment before we move out into the world, may we share another moment together and enjoy the gift of music.